Well, I have loads of people joining in now. So, hey, Raymond from Salt Lake City, 12:30 a.m.
Wow.
I feel your pain, Raymond. I'm in Ireland. It's 7:30 a.m. So,
Look at that. That's a Salt Lake City developer warrior right there. 12:30 a.m. hearing our talk. Welcome, Raymond. I'm in Kirkland outside of Seattle. It's coming up on 11:30 in the evening my time. Thank you so much for joining.
And Alexi is joining us from Boston, Mass. I can't say that one. Massachusetts. That's a tricky one for non-Americans. I'm not going to lie.
Boston, Massachusetts. That's amazing. It's pretty early in the morning your time. I was expecting we'd primarily be dealing with folks from Europe and Asia here tonight. That's impressive. We'll try to be high energy and keep you awake.
Europe calling in. We've got Michael coming in from Germany. Hey, Michael.
All right. Good morning. Michael from Germany. Welcome. Good morning.
We both thought of the same bad joke. Sorry, Michael.
All right.
8:30 a.m. in Germany from Thomas. Hey, Thomas, how's it going?
I'll give us an extra.
Ooh, Australia. I can't even guess. You're like,
wow.
Australia, 7 p.m., 7:30 p.m., something like that, maybe?
I'm sorry that it's not repeated on the schedule, Raymond.
We appreciate you joining us.
Okay, well, I'm going to look at that. Amazing. Queensland. That's awesome. I don't know if anonymous is male or female, but I'll just say good day.
Surely good day, mate, is gender neutral at this stage.
I don't know, but I just don't want to wade in those treacherous waters. All right. We're hitting about 11:30 p.m. I'm going to give us 2 more minutes just to make sure we've got anybody and everybody who wants to huddle around their monitors and feel the warm glow of information about Microsoft 365 application validation. Well, great. I'm interested to hear, like, how do people feel about this new virtual build this year? We've tried to really do some, I think, interesting stuff to enable this around the world. How are you feeling about this build? If people could chime in the live event Q&A, we can maybe get some feedback going as we wait for a few more people to join us. On a scale of 1 to 5, how do you feel about virtual build versus regular build? Anybody?
10. I love it.
Wow, that's awesome. Good to hear.
I think it gives us a much wider audience, so I think that's something we can all really benefit from.
That's good. Super. All right. Well, I'm gonna get started here and introduce myself. I want to say hi to everybody. I'm Michael Aldrich. I'm coming to you from the late evening at 11:32 in Kirkland, Washington. And I've got my partner in crime, Mairead Bush, who's joining me. I'm going to put Mairead up on screen here and send her live.
Hey, folks. Morning from Ireland.
Really great to see you all. And we're here to really create an interactive discussion about Microsoft 365 application validation. We're going to walk through what you need to do to validate your app. And also in the context of that, we want to actually focus on how to avoid the top 5 app submission errors. So Mairead's going to be working the Q&A for me as my moderator, and we'll be getting going here. So here's our agenda, and let me just, now you just bear with us because Mairead and I have never done this with Teams Live before, so we're getting used to how we manage all of this. But what to expect in terms of our agenda, as I said, we're going to focus on really just some introductions of who we are, but then we're going to have a walkthrough about how to validate your app, what are the top 5 failures and how to avoid them. And throughout all of this, we're going to have question and answers. So let's just get right to it, and let's start with introductions. My slides will cooperate with me. There we go. Oh, there's some obligatory stuff I have to do I forgot about. Apologies. The powers that be have told me I must tell you that there are rules for how you engage. So there isn't interactive audio here. We have to use the chat box to ask questions, which you've already started to do. Thank you. You can post anonymously or use your name. And then Mairead will post your questions once she's approved them. And if you see questions that are things that people have posted that you also are interested, please feel free to upvote those. And Mairead, who's one of our in-house experts, as well as myself, will help to answer those either verbally or in the Q&A that you have. And there's etiquette. We all have to have etiquette. That's important. This session is going to be recorded for internal use. One of the things I encourage is that we take pictures of the key slides. So if you see a key slide that's got some good URLs on it that are valuable for you, or tips or tricks that we're going to talk about here, please go ahead and take a picture of those slides in case you want to keep them. But do not record the session yourself other than taking pictures of the slides. Also, please do not spam the chat. Help Mairead, our moderator, to keep that orderly. And there is a Microsoft code of conduct that I have to remind you about. Please make sure you adhere to it. This was part of your registration. I am not going to read this in a 30-minute discussion, so but we hope you'll abide by it. And thank you very much for many of you staying up so late to hear us. So let's cut to the chase and meet the two of us. I'm gonna start with ladies first and send Mairead over to introduce herself to you. Mairead, take it away.
Okay, good morning, folks. So as Michael said, my name is Mairead. That's Irish. It rhymes with parade if you're wondering about the pronunciation. I work out of Microsoft Dublin, Ireland, and I have been working on app validation 8 years this summer. So I've been on this program just coming on 8 years. Fun fact about me is when I joined the program, I didn't know what an Office app or add-in was. I'd never even heard of them. I joined the program because I spoke Japanese and they needed a Japanese tester. So showing you can start from nothing, and these are so easy to pick up once you read the documentation we have out and about all over our sites. And as Michael talks through some of his slides, I'll be putting links to relevant documentation in the chat as announcements. So keep an eye on there and you'll see some good info coming in there as well.
Great. Thanks so much, Mairead. Really appreciate it. So let me just quickly introduce myself. My name is Michael Aldridge. I'm Senior Program Manager in charge of Microsoft 365 app validation. I also am in charge of the Microsoft 365 Developer Program. I'll be giving a talk about that tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Blatant plug, sorry. I'm super excited to be here. I've been running the Developer Program for the last 3 years, and then they've asked me to help take on working with Mairead and her fabulous team all over the world on app validation, and I've been super excited to do that. And I started working on this in January. A couple of fun facts about me: I'm kind of crazy. I like to scuba dive with sharks without a cage. There are some of the countries that I've been to do that, and I'm really crossing my fingers that COVID will allow me to still go to French Polynesia this summer. Although with every passing week, that may not happen. But anyway, let's dive into it, and super excited to be here and help you guys hopefully get your apps into the Microsoft platform and into our Microsoft stores. So, hey, let's talk about that right now. Why validate your app? Well, for those of you that don't know, your app can be featured inside of every Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Office, or SharePoint app. That is a huge number of people. Millions and millions and millions of people all over the world can actually access the store through their apps to get add-ins. We also have a great store called the Microsoft App Store. Now, in order to actually be a part of these stores, you have to go through a validation process in which we're really looking at your user experience and ensuring that you're providing the best experience possible, because your quality is our quality in terms of experience. And so we're trying to make sure that our customers are getting a good experience. And at the same time, it's going to help you to make sure that you're building great experiences for your customers together with us. So let's talk a little bit about the basics of Microsoft 365 app validation. I'm going to start first with our top 5 failures. Top 5 failures are terms of use, privacy policy, testing instructions, additional service and account disclosures, and additional charge disclosures. These probably don't mean much to you right now, but you're going to be hearing about these later on as we go through each of the steps. And so we wanted to make sure we started with how to avoid the top 5 failures, burn this into your brains so that you can think about it. And then you're going to see as we go through our presentation, this red exclamation point. And with this red exclamation point, our pro tips, please look for those critical tips in the slides on how to avoid some of these easy mistakes as we're walking you through the process. Okay, so step number 1 starts with Partner Center. Now, if you're not familiar with Partner Center or you don't have a Partner Center ID, you're going to need to figure out how to get one. Now, I'm not going to spend time showing you how to get a Partner Center ID, but there is a process to do that. You start with this URL, partner.microsoft.com. Once you get in there, then you can actually go into Partner Center and you'll see a console very much like this, where you can actually create or submit your first application. So let me move my slides here to step number 2. So step number 2 in app validation is to define your app name that you're going to submit. So in this case, you can see right here that I'll go to the Office Store in Partner Center, which is on the left nav. And in the overview section, I can actually create a new submission. And I can submit an app that's either an Office add-in, a SharePoint solution, a Power BI visual, or a Teams app. These are all the different kinds of Microsoft 365 apps that are available for validation. And then your first step is to create your new Office add-in name. And you want to make sure, pro tip, get used to that. Make sure your name is something that you want listed in the store and that it's unique. And we actually check the availability of your name just like you would your email address if you were trying to get an email address at outlook.com or any other service. Step number 3 is product setup. And this is where you go into the details of where you think you're going to be and what kinds of stores you're going to be available in. So the first thing is making sure that, are you going to support iOS or Android? If you are, you're going to need to make sure you have your Apple ID and that Apple ID is in your account settings when you enable this selection. That's super critical. A lot of people don't do that and it causes problems for them. The other area is authorization. Is Active Directory required? Is AAD required for your product? Or are you using SSO or the Microsoft Graph API? If your product requires Azure AD, you've got to make sure that you indicate that here. And then this is one of the top pro tips, and one of the areas that people make big mistakes is letting us know if you have additional purchases that are required to use the add-in. You want to watch out here and note this, and then you're going to also need to note that at the end of your submission, there is homework that you have to do in order to make sure that you give us the information we need to validate that in-app purchase and how it works. A lot of people mess up on that. And then the final area is on lead management. I'm not going to spend any time on that, but if you want to connect your app to a lead management system, we enable you to do that. Your next step is to actually take your package, in this case your manifest, and you're going to want to upload that manifest. At this point, Mairead, why don't you talk a little bit, if you could, I'm gonna switch the video over for you, and actually have you explain why is a manifest important. I'm showing on the screen here how you take your manifest, you upload it into Partner Center, and then we actually analyze that manifest and do a lot of tests on it to see if it's compliant or not. Mairead, you want to explain why is a manifest important and how does it play a role in your validation for your team?
Yeah, can do. Thanks, Michael. So you can see on Michael's screen there that he has gone through a demo and he has uploaded a manifest, and you can see on part of the feedback that's come back to him after uploading his manifest, there are some specific platforms listed there. So and when it lists specific platforms there, that's telling you that based on your manifest, these are the platforms your add-in is supposed to work in. So it's the platforms that the validation team are going to test your add-in on. Now, the reason this piece is really important is we get a lot of time partners, developers who, for whatever reason, don't want to support a specific platform. Maybe they don't want to support Office 2013. Maybe nobody in their business concept is using Office 2013. And they don't understand why we're requiring them to support Office 2013. Simple answer is our support requirements are based on what's in your manifest. So if you're using an API that doesn't support Office 2013, when you upload your manifest, Office 2013 is not going to be there. And I'll give you an example of if your manifest contains the requirement Excel API 1.8, when you upload that manifest, Office 2013 isn't going to be there. Therefore, the test team aren't going to test on Office 2013, and we're not going to require you to support it. So use the hosts and APIs to control the products and platforms where you want to be supported. And I'm going to, once I finish talking, put a couple of links into the announcement to give you some more background information on hosts and requirements and the various API sets available to you.
Great. Hey, Mairead, are there any other big questions that we should be talking about here or before we move on to the next section?
I've got a really good one in from David, and I'm going to hold it because it fits better in a slide later on. So David, we haven't forgotten about you. We will come back to you.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Okay, so you heard from Mairead that really the manifest is the roadmap for what we need to test, and it's critical, and so you want to make sure that everything in there is accurate and correct. The next step after your manifest is loaded is that we have another section called properties. Now, properties is really where you define the metadata for your store listing. So part of this is going to be part of the process of your store listing. The other part of your store listing is going to be in the marketplace listings, which I'll talk about in a minute. But this is where if you're creating an add-in, for example, let's say I'm creating an add-in for Excel using custom functions, and it might be targeting accounting and finance. I might want to indicate that here in this category right up here. Or I might be creating an add-in for Word, and I'll want to make sure that that's something that might be attractive for the legal and HR industries or categories. And then there's different industries if you're interested, like if you're doing an add-in that appeals to education, for example, et cetera, you can indicate those industries, and then that will be categorized in our search engines and in our catalog. Now, what a lot of people don't do is they kind of skip over the support info section here, and that is probably the biggest mistake that we see across the board. More errors and failures are created in this step than any other part of submission. People overlook the support, the privacy policy, and the EULA asks we make here, and we want to call this out and we want to spend a little time on it because we want to make sure that you don't run up against these same problems. So we're going to drill down a little bit into how you avoid this. So first of all, your submission really needs to actually look at the support info. Don't skip over it, and make sure you've got a URL for support that customers can go to when they have issues with your add-in. And then in the privacy section, I'll talk about that in a minute. We've got a ton of advice there on ways in which you need to think about being compliant there. And then finally, end user license agreement. You've got to have a EULA that passes muster or that passes our standards to provide to your customers. And Mairead, I think you've got a link for a EULA that can be used by companies if they don't have their own. And if you do, if you could post that into the Q&A, that'd be great. Do you have any questions that we need to field here before we move on to the next section, Mairead?
No, not at this point in time. I'm answering a couple of questions in chat, folks, so you might not get a verbal answer, but you might get an answer just in your chat instead.
Okay, great. Let's talk a little bit about privacy, because this is the other area where people have real struggles. Now, the privacy policy, if we've got a privacy policy or a link to a privacy policy that refers to the add-in or the developer service overall, that will pass, and that does well. But you can see 4 different examples where people have essentially given us things that really don't pass. For example, if the privacy policy only refers to the developer's website and not the app itself or the add-in, that is not going to pass. If the privacy policy just refers to the service, but they define the service and it doesn't include the add-in in the definition, that's not going to pass. And then if the link is not a privacy policy at all, that's not going to pass. And finally, some people actually just give us a link that generates a 404, and that doesn't pass. So finally, the most important pro tip is in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, and that is that terms of use are not the same as a privacy policy. Some people confuse that. They'll put in a link to terms of use and think that that's going to work. That is not going to work. So we want to make sure that people are aware that you do have to have a privacy policy, and it does have some standard. We do have some standards for privacy policy that need to be followed. Okay, so moving on, if there are any major questions there, let's move on to the next section, which is marketplace listings. This is where essentially we've got some challenges in terms of our UX. I'll be honest. A lot of people, when I went through usability testing a couple months ago on this, a lot of people were confused about this. And so what I want to do is try to eliminate some of that confusion. First and foremost, when you get to this experience the first time, you're going to see that there's really nothing here that tells you right away what you have to do. I'm going to help guide you here by saying your first step is to click on Manage Additional Languages and define a language. So you want to define a language. Typically, in this case, we will start with English. And you'll define and click on English. And once you've saved that, then that will actually create English here as a language that's listed in your marketplace listing. And you're going to want to click on that English link. And that English link will take you to this page. And this page represents really all of the listing information that's on the right-hand side. And I'm giving you an example of an ISV that has a listing in Microsoft App Source today. And each of these elements is essentially controlled by the market listings page you see here. So first of all, the name is indicated. Then you'll have a brief summary or a tagline that helps to sell the value of your add-in. And then you'll have a detailed description, and you can actually see that there's a lot of detail you can add here. And you can also do this. This supports HTML. So if you have your own HTML editor, I would strongly encourage you to use an HTML editor to craft this. Once you get it looking exactly the way you want, you can paste that HTML in here. We do not give you the ability to preview it, but by you previewing it beforehand in your own editor, it helps you to make sure that when it's published, you don't have to go in and make a bunch of extra corrections. The other area is search keywords. We give you up to 3 different keywords you might want to associate with this that helps in our search engines. And then finally, we've got the icon that has to follow our standards, and the screenshots that you use to sell the value of this, the images you use to sell the value of your add-in. And we've got a pro tip here. There's some docs that Mairead will put in the link, but you can also take a picture of this slide if you want to get to the docs on how to create effective images and screenshots that meet our standards. Because if you don't meet our standards, we will automatically reject you here, and it's important to try to avoid that. Finally, there's an area that a lot of people missed that I saw in usability, and that was the video link. This actually helps you to have video demos as part of your gallery of information. It's under additional information here. Strongly encourage you to use that to have great content that sells the value of your add-in and why people should download it. All right, Mairead, any other questions here before I can move on? All right, we're getting to the close to the end here. Now, the next step is availability. And this is really where you define when does your add-in launch and in what markets. And you do that down here, and you schedule it down here, and you indicate what markets, and there's different markets that you can schedule it in if you want to when you show options. The one big pro tip I will give you here is plan ahead. You need to give yourself at least 6 weeks to go through this submission process because there's a lot of back and forth. And on average, there's about 2 to 3 fails per app submission, particularly if it's the very first app submission you've ever done. So budget that it's going to take 4 to 6 weeks to get approved. So that means that if you try to submit your app and you have to be live tomorrow, it ain't going to happen. It will take some time. So please understand that and bear with us as we try to basically, part of the reason why we're trying to do the work we're doing here tonight is to help prevent you from having that 2 to 3 fails per submission, and hopefully you can get it done in 1 to 2. But it's important to remember that as you set your availability here. All right, we're at the very end of the process.
I'm going to jump in with a question on that slide, Michael.
Absolutely, I'll head back there.
And I'll also give you your 5-minute warning. You're coming up on 6 minutes left in the session. So we have a question in from David about a recent developer call, and he says that Mike, and I don't know if that's you or other Mike, so it might be you, might be something you're good to talk about, mentioned a workaround for running an Office add-in in a private beta via AppSource. And David is wondering, could we get an overview and link to instructions on that?
We do not have good private beta capabilities right now. There is a very, very, very wonky way to do a private beta, but it's not something that we really feel good about having a lot of customers do. That said, we have escalated with the AppSource team that we need to have better private beta functionality because we know that there's great functionality out there. So I don't have a great answer for you, and I certainly can't share instructions in this call. But you know, there are some ways to do it, and it's very, very limited. So honestly, I don't want to actually say that we have it right now. What we have is in situations where you have a brand new app that you've never ever released before, there can be ways in which we can hack a private beta, but it's not easy to do. And even with some of our largest partners, we haven't recommended it. So I guess my short answer is not really. It's sort of okay, but we also know we really need a good private beta capability, and we're working to try to get that. And I hope by build of next year, we'll actually have better news on that front. Okay. Okay. Let's go. Because we're running short on time. I just want to make sure that people understand the very end of this process is reviewing and publishing, and you can see that there's a check. There's really a checklist here of each of these things that we've done in terms of setup, packages, properties, marketplace listings, and availability. Some of which are complete and some of which are not complete. And if they're not complete, we don't allow you to publish. But a lot of people don't really use this notes for certification, and it's super critical. Notes for certification are one of the biggest areas where we have problems and where things get rejected, and you don't want to overlook this. And if you remember in step 1, we talked about, hey, if I have additional purchases that are required, that I need to make sure that in the notes for certification box that I'm giving the validation team everything they need to validate how additional purchases work, because we have to know how that works and make sure that it's easy for customers. So that's where we want to remind you about this. And then also, if there's any critical instructions for the reviewer here, including test accounts, license keys, or test creds, you know, you've got to provide that information here. And by the way, some people love to do this through essentially saying, oh, well, if you just email Joe at xyz.com, he'll give you permissions. Guess what? Braid and her team don't like that. They're working on this all over the world at different times. Joe may be asleep. We need you to give us all the information we can. You need to give us all the information that right here in these notes, so that they can actually get an account and be able to test it without having to get a bunch of human help involved. And if you don't do that and you send an email to us that say, hey, this guy will help you get permissions, you will be rejected. So really important that you remember that. So it's about almost at time, but we were able to make it through, and you saw all the critical steps, and we talked about each one of these areas of failure and how to avoid it. I want to make sure that we have time for any additional questions. Please don't forget to complete the survey. Really helps us to make us better, particularly as we learn how to do these virtual events. It's been super exciting to talk with you, and I hope that this met your expectations. Love to remind you to subscribe to our latest videos. Join the Microsoft 365 Developer Program if you haven't already, or take a learning path or get certified. Feel free to take a picture of this to take these links. And Mairead will also put these into the live event Q&A. Any questions, Mairead, that we could answer before we say goodbye?
No, we've got a pretty quiet audience. We've had a couple of queries that have been answered out in chat and published. So if you haven't heard Michael talk through an answer, it might already be out in the chat.
Well, great. Well, I want to thank everybody, and in particular, I want to thank Mairead. Thank you very much for all your work to help prepare for this and to help monitor the Q&A. Good luck with everything, and we really appreciate your support of the Microsoft 365 platform, and we wish you a fantastic rest of build. So thank you, and good night or good morning.
Thanks a million, folks. Have a great day.